Hey scholars, this is a video to complement the introductory speech assignment for our class. This is something that I already talked about in class, but this is a video that you can watch potentially more than once to help you to understand more fully the nature of the speech. Please be sure that you're following along with the introductory speech assignment document, which is in the same module as where you got this video, where you clicked on the link for this video. I recommend that before you watch the video, read through the whole assignment document, which will only take you a couple minutes, and then watch the video. So what you're doing for this speech, one of the things I talk about in class is this is one way to think about the first speech is that it's a delivery exercise. You're seeing what it's like to, for the first time, giving a formal speech in this classroom, what it's like to use your voice, to use your body, use your hand gestures, your facial expressions, the way that you're connecting with the audience using appropriate eye behavior. The way your voice sounds in our classroom, the way your voice sounds in our classroom is different than the way it might sound in other classrooms, just based on the logistics of different classrooms and all that kind of stuff. That's one way to think about it. It's a much less formal speech. This is an opportunity for you to introduce yourself. But instead of telling us all about yourself, instead of giving us the full background of, where you were born, where you grew up, all your likes and dislikes, your favorite hobbies, et cetera, you're kind of focusing on one aspect of your life using an object. So it's an object speech, or rather it's an introductory speech using an object as a way to introduce yourself. So I give you some examples there. I talked about some stuff in class. So talk about, you start off the speech with an attention getter. Don't start off the speech by saying, so I chose I just had this right here. I chose a screwdriver as my object. Don't say that. It's obvious. If I'm holding it, it's obvious that I chose a screwdriver as my object. Try to think of something creative. Think of a creative attention getter as a way to get the audience's attention focused on you, and then you introduce your object, you introduce yourself, and so on and so forth. I definitely recommend that you watch all the different sample speeches that are on the sample introductory speeches links. All those links are in our Canvas page. I think there's like 4 or 5 different sample speeches to give you an idea of what an introductory speech looks like. Years ago, I had a student who started off her speech, the same exact speech, introductory speech using an object. She started off the speech by holding a camera. She had a camera around her neck, like the thing that goes around the neck, and she was holding the camera, and she was like kind of pointing it at the audience, and she started off by saying the first words out of her mouth were, "I like to shoot people," pause, with my camera. So like she had the timing down perfect, right? She said, "I like to shoot people." We're like, "What?" And then like a 1-second pause with my camera, and then it was so obvious what she was talking about. So it was funny, and it was relevant, appropriate to the occasion, and it got her attention, and obviously was related to her passion for photography. So try to think of something very creative. If you just start off by saying, "My speech is on cameras. I chose as a camera as my object." Well, that's a poor attention getter. That lacks any sort of thinking. That lacks creativity. Think of something creative as a way to get to get the audience's attention. And then you introduce the object. You'd introduce yourself. If it were my screwdriver, I might tell a story of like, hey, growing up as a kid, my grandfather used to always work on cars or work on the house, and he was fixing things, and I always was interested in it. And one day he allowed me to help him with installing a light fixture in the ceiling. And then I go into this story of my exposure to something like handiwork, and then I talk about my passion for handiwork. And then, gosh, there's so many different things you can talk about with regards to like how it makes you feel, and how using different tools is a way for you to be creative, and a way to work with your hands, and a way to represent different aspects of yourself. You might talk about being independent, like I'm an independent person. For example, in school, I like to do X, Y, and Z by myself. And then when I'm doing stuff at home, doing handiwork or like fixing things with tools, I also like to be independent. And when I'm not independent, I consult things like whatever, YouTube or an owner's manual. So there's a lot of different ways that you can give this speech, but the bottom line is you want to be talking about yourself, talking about not so much in detail about the nature of the object. I'm not going to go in depth about the nature of the handle, the kind of plastic it's made from, and to go like elaborate in detail about every single component of this object. I would briefly talk about like, hey, this is a DeWalt Phillips head screwdriver, and the tip of it is magnetic, which helps you to um, helps to stick to screws and whatnot, and that way it makes things easier. And then you can even relate that into like, hey, in life I try to do things, work smart, not hard. So this is an example of working smart, not hard, right? The little magnetic tip picks up screws and it makes it easier to screw it into things, right? So you can get as creative as you want with regards to like the nature of the object, how that relates to you, how it relates to like different things that you use it for, that object, whether it's a tool or like a pen or a pencil and it relates to your writing, or like a piece, maybe it's a jewelry, a piece of jewelry that you got from a family member, and what that represents and who gave it to you. And there's no one correct way to do this. There's lots of incorrect ways to do the speech. But keep in mind, this is the first speech. It's worth 50 points. You're telling a story. You're sharing with the audience part of your life, not your whole life, but just one aspect of your life. If I like to use tools, that's only one aspect of my life. There's a bunch of other things in my life that I'm not going to share, but I'm just kind of focusing on one narrative. The fact that I like to work with my hands and I like to use tools and I like to fix things and build things, not in particular, just for the sake of this example. And I'm just focusing on that one aspect of my life. But I can also relate that to other aspects of my life. Like I love working with my hands and fixing things with tools, but then, hey, in relationships, I also like to use my words as tools to try to fix relationships or something like that, right? Those are not requirements. There's just so many different ways to do the speech. I give you some questions that you can consider addressing on the bottom of page 1 right there. Obviously, what's the object? How does it represent you? How does it play a role in your life? Your work life, school life, personal life? Does it relate to a major turning point in your life? How so? Those are just some questions to get you thinking. But with regards to some of the things I have up there, I said make sure to select a topic that allows you to maintain control of your emotions while you speak. So a topic that potentially saddens you could impact your ability to effectively deliver the speech. Once in a great while, a student will be talking about a part of their life that brings up some pretty intense emotions, and every once in a while, the student will not be able to maintain their composure on stage, and during the speech, they might get emotional, they might start crying, or they get emotional and maybe not cry, but it definitely makes it more challenging to give the speech. So if you want to share certain aspects of your life, that's fine, but just make sure that you're able to maintain control, maintain composure. You're more than welcome to talk to me in advance if you have some specific questions about whatever it is that you're considering. Make sure that whatever stories that you're telling are appropriate to the audience, appropriate to this class, considering the nature of our course, considering the nature of the policies in our course. Worst case scenario, you start telling stories that are very inappropriate. Basically, I cut you off. I say, hey, stop your speech. And in all likelihood, you'll probably get a 0, or we'll meet in person and talk about it. This is not something that's happened more than just a few times in my career. But, I have no issues with stopping you in the middle of the speech if it's not appropriate. So I'm not concerned about that for our class, but just make sure that whatever it is that you do share is appropriate. This is a much less formal speech. You're not doing library research. You're not having like source citations. You're not having like a detailed outline. You're not turning in anything. The only thing that you'll turn in at the end of your speech is your index card. So that is the only thing that you can have up there with you. The only thing with any sort of writing on it is one single index card. It needs to either be 4x6 or 5x8. Handwriting only. Only handwriting. No printing. Don't write small. Don't try to like write out your speech word for word and read it in front of the class. Like I said, in class, if you were to do that, I might just cut you off. If you're just reading word for word and you're not looking at us, I might just tell you to stop. And then we'll meet, and then that's usually not a fun experience. But the point is that you're sharing with the class. It does feel uncomfortable, right? That's this class. It's public speaking, and there is a component of it it's an uncomfortable feeling. But just because something is an uncomfortable feeling in a social setting, or whether it's a job interview or a challenging conversation, doesn't mean that it's not a good thing to do. I mean, with giving a speech in a class, it's uncomfortable, but it doesn't mean it's not a good thing to do. It's just uncomfortable. But in this class, we we learn all these different types of tools that help you to manage that anxiety. The butterflies may never go away, but in this class you could experience and learn about tools that help you to manage those butterflies so that you can coexist with the stage fright and still deliver an effective speech. Just like in a job interview, you go to a job interview, especially one that's really important to you, like a big career job interview, you're gonna be nervous, right? You should be. It'd be weird if you weren't nervous. It'd be weird if you didn't have butterflies in your stomach, but that doesn't mean that you can't give an amazing job interview. It just means that you have to learn how to manage those butterflies, and you do that by preparing appropriately. But given what I just discussed, this is not a formal speech, but you should absolutely, most definitely have an outline for your speech. Maybe you're going to tell a story you've told 100 times. You still should have an outline. You're not turning it in. This is for your own benefit to ensure that you have appropriate structure, that you're not just sort of aimlessly wandering once you're up on stage. You have a beginning, a middle, and an end. You have an attention getter. You tell about yourself. You talk about the object, how it relates to your life. You're connecting the dots, and then you end the speech somehow memorably. It's only 2 to 3 minutes. So it has to be at least 2 minutes, no more than 3 minutes. So go for 2.5 minutes would be my advice to you. That should be your goal time. In terms of preparation, in terms of rehearsing the speech, you don't want to rehearse too much in advance. You don't want to have it completely down 5 days before the speech. That's a little bit too soon. But what I've said in class and sort of the rule of thumb is on the day of your speech, when you wake up that morning, if it's a Tuesday or a Thursday, when you wake up in the morning, your speech, you should be absolutely, completely ready to go. Like no more preparation is needed. On the day of your speech, when you wake up, it should just be a matter of, okay, I'll rehearse it a few more times just to kind of like get that fine polish. You're just doing that fine tuning, the polishing of the speech, but I'm meeting my goal time. I'm barely relying on my note cards. Like I have this down. So do whatever it is you need to do to get to that point. And that might be 3 days of planning prior to that, or 2 days of planning. Have small sessions where you rehearse your speech by yourself. I would say don't do it in the mirror. A lot of people say like, oh, you rehearse your speech in the mirror. I advise against that because when you're looking at yourself giving a speech, it's a heck of a lot different than when you're looking at an audience giving the speech. My advice to you is do it in a room, in your office, in your bedroom, in your kitchen, in a garage, or somewhere where you have hopefully limited distractions. But sometimes you have to rehearse your speech with your family members or roommates making noises and stuff like that. And that's just the nature of life. When you're rehearsing your speech, use your public speaking voice. Make sure you're standing. Pretend that the thing that you're looking at is your audience. You have to, this is called role playing, right? Actors do this all the time. You're rehearsing lines for a play or whatever. If you're in your garage, you can look at all the different things, your lawnmower or your gardening tools or the cars or just different random things in your bedroom. If you want, you can set up like stuffed animals as your pretend audience. No judgment there. Some people do that, but whatever works. And the idea is that you're practicing, you're simulating the public speaking experience, whether that's your bedroom, your kitchen, your garage. It does feel a little bit awkward. You're like, man, I'm rehearsing this speech and I'm speaking kind of loudly and I'm by myself. I'm home. There's no one else here. Maybe my neighbors can hear me. Okay, so maybe your neighbors can hear you. The point is you need to do what you need to do in order to give the best possible speech. And if you're only rehearsing while you're just sort of like talking under your breath, or you're talking like, okay, good morning, class, my speech is, if you're just sort of like whispering as you're preparing, that's still something, but it's definitely, it pales in comparison to when you're rehearsing, when you're standing, you're engaging with the audience, your hypothetical audience, you're just making it up, but you're practicing eye behavior. You're looking at the different objects in your room, whether it's the different parts of the wall or pillows or objects or lamps or computers. It doesn't matter. So because what happens is when you do that and you're really well prepared, then you go into the classroom and you're like, I got this. I've already done this like 20 times, 30 times, whatever the case may be. And now it's like this final time where you're being evaluated. If you've ever played in competitive sports, or you do some sort of a performance, whether it's in dance or playing an instrument or something like that, or you're in sports, like you're on the field, so to speak. It's like, hey, you've been practicing, and now is your time. Now it's like the audience is watching, the points are being counted, and so on and so forth. So that's one way to think about what you're doing for this speech and all speeches is it's a performance, right? And if you're not really well prepared, then it's much harder to execute your speech in the way that you want to, assuming that you want to do it really well. That's the assumption here, is that everyone wants to do as good as they can possibly do. I think that about covers it. Make sure you read through this whole thing, the whole introductory speech assignment document. Read through my grading rubric. That's how I grade the speech. Read through the possible grade deductions in terms of not meeting the time or exceeding the time. Worst case scenario, if you were to exceed the time, I would just cut you off. If you're past 3 minutes, I can kind of tell if you're done. For the most part, I have an idea if you're done. And if you're going past 3 minutes, I might just say like, hey, it's time to wrap up the speech. But make sure you practice so much that it like becomes muscle memory. That every time you rehearse your speech, you're going between like 210 and 215, or maybe in your case it's between 230 and 240. And if you're always hitting that like between 230 and 240 as you rehearse your speech, then you're good. If it's too long, well then you need to shorten it. You need to talk faster or cut some stuff out. If it's too short, well, maybe you need to talk more slowly or add more stuff in. So it takes planning. A lot of students ask if they have to dress up. You do not have to dress up. This is more of a casual speech. In our class, I don't require any sort of formal dress for any of the speeches. My recommendation to you is dress in a way that you feel good. If dressing up, if wearing clothes that you don't typically wear, your version of dressed up, if that's what makes you more comfortable, if that's what makes you feel more confident, and you feel better about yourself giving the speech, then dress that way. But dress in a way that makes you feel good, where you're comfortable, where you're able to engage with the audience, where it's not a distraction. The way you dress has no impact on your grade. So just keep that in mind. Dress the way that you want to dress for the speech. You will be standing during the speech. You will be incorporating the object. You don't have to hold it the whole time, but you will be incorporating it somehow. Like if I'm giving a speech on the Phillips head screwdriver, I'm not going to be holding it like this in front of the audience the whole time. I'll pick it up at some point and I'll point things out to it. I'll talk about it. I might put it down. Might set it on the table, and then at another point in the speech, I might pick it up again and refer to it or something like that, right? But you want to strategically incorporate that into your speech. Okay, so that's about all I can think of with regards to what you need to be aware of for doing the best job of this speech, for the speech. All right, I hope you're all doing great. Talk to you later. Bye.